An additional warning, this episode mentions violence against children and is not suited for all listeners. Please use discretion. The genre of true crime is not suited to everybody. The 26th of January 2025 will mark 59 years since Jane, aged 9, Arnna, aged 7, and Grant, aged 4, disappeared from Glenelg, South Australia, in 1966. The disappearance of the Beaumont children is a crime that is hardly outwardly spoken about anymore, but it's still there, lingering in the background of decisions to let your kids play outside. It's a festering wound in our society, alongside the still, as of this publication of this episode, unsolved Adelaide Oval abduction, where Joanne Ratcliffe and Kirsty Gordon were kidnapped in 1973. There are many unanswered questions about the disappearance of the 3 children that I truly believe we will never know the answer to. In fact, their parents will never know the answers, for their mother, Nancy Beaumont, died in 2019, and their father, Grant Beaumont, died in 2023, without ever knowing who abducted and killed their children. This episode attempts to serve as a poignant reminder of the importance of perseverance in the pursuit of truth and accountability. Justice, when achieved, paves the way for truth-telling and can bring an end to the torment of ambiguous loss, a unique form of grief experienced when a loved one or friend disappears without resolution. On the topic of ambiguous loss, you may occasionally hear the term closure in discussions in true crime. However, in cases of long-term missing persons, closure is often an unattainable concept. The grief experienced by those left behind may persist indefinitely, spanning years or even a lifetime. Death offers finality, disappearance does not. While researching archival footage and sound from this case, I found myself momentarily amused amidst the gravity of it all. In a 1967 Channel 9 news segment marking 1 year since the Beaumont children disappeared, a reporter delivers a piece to camera in that distinct, old English-Australian accent. He speaks of a new revelation in the case, a woman's sighting of the children at a bakery, and then quips.
So we have the evidence, which is that the last positive sighting of the children was on the foreshore, being questioned by the woman's evidence that the children, in actual fact, were in her shop somewhere between 11:15 and 11:30 on the morning that they disappeared. Detective Bright of Glenelg, who's been in charge of the case all the way along the line, told me today that this was the most significant clue which police had to the disappearance of the Beaumont children. And yet, at no stage has this ever been played up to newsmen as being a top clue. And consequently, it's come to light again today. I tried to find out just why and how it came to light again today, but I ran into a brick wall.
Nearly 60 years later, the often fraught dynamic between the press and police in Australia remains familiar. It was striking and a little amusing to realise that even then, journalists felt the same frustrations in their pursuit of the truth. But I digress. Now, let's go into the story. What may be helpful for you is to use a Maps application or software to follow along with the story.
A site which I'm sure has not been duplicated in South Australia before.
In a dig out, that is maybe something about it. Yes, and that particular hole of cave
surrounds a claim by a Morphettville woman who claims that just a year ago tomorrow, the Beaumont children came into a bakery in Glenelg and bought from her pies, pasties and cool drinks. They paid for them with a £1 note, but Mrs. Beaumont, the mother of the children, revealed that she only gave them 7 and 6 for their fares and lunch. The woman in the shop reported this to police at the time and also outlined the details to Channel 9's Kevin Crease. I spoke with her again today, and she's positive that the children were the Beaumonts. So we have...
On Australia Day, the 26th of January 1966, 3 children, Jane, Arnna and Grant, left their home in Somerton Park, a suburb 12 kilometres southwest of the Adelaide Central Business District. If you pull up your map, you can see it's bordered on the west by the water and suburbs on the north, east and southern sides. It was summer and a hot day. The children woke up at 7 a.m. and eventually convinced their mother, Nancy, to let them go to the beach, but on the condition that they returned on the midday bus. In the morning, Nancy waits by the gate and watches her children walk 100 metres west towards Diagonal Road to catch the bus to Glenelg. Glenelg has been the staple beach for many Australian families and tourists for decades. It's easily accessible by tram and it has a straight connection, Anzac Highway, by car from and to the city. January 26 is usually a warm, sometimes extremely hot day and falls at the end of school holidays. Because of its proximity to the beach and the city, some areas of the suburb are affluent, such as the streets around the church and just to the east of the beach. The 3 children are spotted by a passenger on the bus alighting at the Moseley Street stop, just around the corner from Jetty Road. The 3 children then walk west and are spotted playing in the water near the Glenelg Jetty between 10:20 and 11 a.m. At 11 a.m, an elderly woman spots the 3 children playing in the sprinklers at Collie Reserve, and were apparently being watched by a blonde-haired man. He is described as wearing swimming trunks and lying on a blanket near the children. Witnesses later recall the children appearing relaxed and comfortable with him, indicating familiarity or trust. At 11:15 a.m, the same woman sees the man playing with the children and helping them put their shorts over their bathers. So I'm pretty much standing in the exact spot where the 3 children put their towels down while they were going back and forth to the water. To the north of me, you've got the Rotunda, there's Collie Reserve. To the west of me is the beach. Behind me and a little bit further east is Wenzel's Bakery. I've been down here ever since I was a kid, but when you walk the timeline out, when they disappeared, and when the sightings and they were last seen, you can almost draw out a triangle of the different areas. To the left of me is the water, which is, I would probably say, about 80 metres, 100 metres away. And I'm just going to walk to Collie Reserve, this is where the children were seen playing in the sprinklers, and just on the left-hand side of that were the change rooms. It's very, very different to what it was back then. There's now apartments, there's a place called the Beach House where it's like our former place of Magic Mountain, and in the early 20th century this whole area was actually a Luna Park, which is really interesting. But I've just left from where the park bench was, and I'm going at an adult pace, but keep walking a little bit. And kids walk a lot slower. You would have had the 3 children walk this way, and basically at the edge of the Rotunda, which overlooks the Collie Reserve. It's like this huge, you could almost say like an amphitheatre now. It's just grass, hill. Back then there was a car park at the end of Collie Reserve, and the change rooms were on the left-hand side. And I'm already basically at the edge of Collie Reserve just from walking where the park bench was, that they were seen. And that really didn't take long at all. I can already see the water. It's quite hilly. It's not flat here. So there are these sort of 3 main areas that we know the children were seen in. You've got where they put their towels down, playing in the sprinklers, and the Wenzel's Cake Shop, which was along Jetty Road. It's really interesting when you physically walk this area. It's a really, really small area. You can see, like I said, where the children are playing in the sprinklers, and I can also see the church, which is to the east. So one of the main theories is that there's a man called Harry Phipps, and from my research, I genuinely think he may be the person that is responsible. And I think in terms of circumstantial evidence, if you were to lay out everything, he is the most likely person, I believe. And one of the main reasons is just the proximity and the closeness of everything. I'm literally just about to walk down the street that he lived on. So I'm leaving the south side of Collie Reserve. It is 9:48 in the morning, and I'm just going to do a leisurely stroll straight to his house, or what was his house. So you have to cross what's called Collie Terrace, and that connects Jetty Road in the south with Anzac Highway in the north. And so I'm just walking along Augusta Street. You can probably hear the church bells. But I'm just going to do a really, really slow walk. And that's pretty much it. I'm on the corner of Sussex and Augusta Street, which is where the house of Harry Phipps, or where he lived. It's 9:51. That took 3 minutes. So if you had 3 children with you, they're probably a little bit exhausted, a little bit tired. Maybe it would take 5 minutes, a little bit longer. Now, the other thing that we know is that Jane went to Wenzel's Bakery. Now, Wenzel's Bakery was on Jetty Road. And it's pretty much almost directly south from the house, which I'm going to walk down. It's now 9:51. So I've gotten to Jetty Road, and I'll just walk a little bit further to where Wenzel's cake shop was. So it is now 9:56. It's really surprising to walk it all out and realise they were really not far from each other in terms of the places that they were sighted at. Yeah. At 12 p.m, the children purchased pasties, a pie, and some drinks from Wenzel's cake shop or bakery. They use a £1 note, even though their mother only gave them some coins. Instead of returning home as they should have, they walk back to Collie Reserve, and by 12:15, an elderly couple at Collie Reserve see the three children waiting on a seat close to the reserve change rooms. I mean, there are so many frustrating things about this case that just really makes you wonder. I mean, this was 1966. It's now the 12th of January, 2025, which means it's been a long, long time with absolutely nothing in terms of the police investigation. And I'm not saying that they didn't do a good job. I get that policing was different back then. And the dig that they did at the factory in 2018, yeah. It's just, I don't understand how 3 children can go missing in such a way. I'm just walking back to the former home of Harry Phipps, where I genuinely think the children were taken. When 2 p.m. went by, Nancy said that she thought perhaps the 3 had missed the bus, but they were originally going to take home and were on the next one. When the 3 of them failed to get off the next bus, Nancy began to grow concerned and contacted the police, but it wouldn't be until the next day the Beaumont children would be declared officially missing. Grant Beaumont, their father, searched tirelessly for his children, and even after being dropped off back home, he returned to the area in his car to continue searching. We're now at the 59-year mark since the children disappeared. There has never been a crime scene, and there has never been a definitive name. There have been several names associated with the disappearance of the 3 children, including Bevan Spencer Von Einem, Harry Phipps, and Alan Anthony Munro. Von Einem is a convicted child killer linked to other child murders in South Australia. His profile and known crimes suggest that he had the capability and motive, but there was no direct evidence tying him to the Beaumont case. Harry Phipps was a wealthy Adelaide businessman whose factory was located near where the children were last seen. He was known to have exhibited suspicious behaviour and fits descriptions given by witnesses. In 2018, police excavated his factory site but found no evidence linking him to the case, though he remains a person of interest. Alan Anthony Munro is a former Victorian Scout leader and convicted child sex offender. He is alleged to have confessed to involvement in the disappearance, though no substantial evidence supports this claim. But remember, this podcast isn't about the evil people who commit crimes and give fantasy and notoriety to killers. It's to remind you that these children have never been found and are still considered missing. Their bodies have never been located, I believe we as a society failed Nancy and Grant Beaumont. They spent decades of their lives psychologically tortured by the unknown, and we could never provide an answer for them as to what happened to their children. I know people have spent years and decades of their lives working on the Beaumont case, and I understand that. But why is this still unsolved, and why can we not bury the children alongside their parents? What circles of protection exist today and back then in 1966? Will someone come forward and break the line of trust they promised someone to finally tell the truth of what happened to these 3 children? It's a bittersweet reflection of the times that as a society, we never blamed Nancy or Jim Beaumont for what happened to their children. No one pointed fingers at their decision to let Jane, Arnna, and Grant venture to the beach alone that summer morning. It was the 1960s, when neighbourhoods felt like extended families and when parents trusted their communities, and when the idea of danger seemed far, far more distant. The Beaumonts were no different from countless families who let their kids explore the world with innocence and freedom. Today we might call it naive, but back then it was simply life, and while that collective understanding spared Nancy and Jim the cruel judgment that so often compounds unimaginable grief, it also underscores how profoundly the disappearance of their children shattered that shared trust forever. Today, our fear of stranger danger looms large and overshadows deeper issues of systemic protection and prevention. The burden of vigilance has shifted heavily onto individuals and families, yet we rarely interrogate how institutions and broader societal structures can do more to keep children safe.